In this example, I'm going to make the soft focus around the helmets. You can see just by clicking on and off this top layer what the effect looks like. First thing I'm going to do is duplicate the layer by clicking, dragging it down to the plus sign at the bottom. And once I have that layer, I'm going to go to Filters, Blurs, and just add a general blur on the entire layer. Messing with the radius, and see, clicking on the preview, the effect that it's having. And once again, just turning on and off that layer just to see that effect. And if I zoom in a bit, you can really start to see what effect that blur is having on the numbers, on the letters, on the background, and the foreground. It's just an overall soft blur. So the next thing I want to do is create a little bit of a blur around everything else except for the helmets. And to do that, I'm just going to use the elliptical marquee tool. So when I hold Shift down, it should let me create a perfect circle. I can let go of the Shift key and it will let me squash and stretch the cursor or the selection. And I can also move around my selection if I need to. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller here. And this is going to depend on the size of your image. So 10 pixels might be enough. In this case I have a pretty big image, so I'm going to increase this a little bit. And try 100, see what happens. That's good. So now I've got it a little bit better size on here, and I can move it around. And again, once you make the selection, you can always move that selection area around. It won't grab anything, it won't move anything out of place, it'll just move the selection. So now I'm just going to go to a feather. And again, since it's a big shape or big image, I might have to increase the size of my feather. You see that deformed the shape a little bit, made it a little bit smaller. Now just kind of showing you what that looks like when I delete that. It's a nice kind of feathered edge to my selection. And I've got everything I want selected. Just turning all those layers back on again. And now I want to create a blur, a second blur now on the rest of the image, excluding the helmets. And I'll just choose lens blur this time, or box blur, just so you can see what that looks like. And with the feathering, you'll see it'll blend in nicely with the other blur that we have on there. I'm just going to crank it up a little bit higher so you can see, the effect. And Command D will deselect everything, or Control D. I'm just turning it on and off to kind of see what the difference is. And as I zoom in, you can really see that the helmets are still in focus. They're a little bit blurred, so if we put the initial blur on, but the rest of the background is really, really blurred. I'm just dialing down the opacity now so you can see how we can kind of dial in that effect. If it's too much, we can just dial that down and we'll bring back the original image more and more. So maybe at 100% it's too much, but if I bring it down a little bit, you can see, maybe that's the kind of look you're looking at, or you're looking for. And at 0%, obviously there's no effect. So if I add a layer mask, just by clicking on that rectangle with the circle cut out from it, I can make this even more selective as far as what I want to see and reveal or hide. So I'm going to go to the brush tool and make sure my foreground and background swatches are black and white. And I'm just going to make sure that I've got the hardness down to 0. And shortcut key to kind of increase. You can ignore that little error right now. Square bracket left and right will kind of decrease or increase the size of the brush. There it goes. And just make sure that I've got the mask selected, and now when I paint with black, you'll see not only the original image kind of start appearing and the clear in focus letters and numbers and helmets come in, but you also can, if you just take a look at the mask itself, just by kind of alt clicking or option clicking onto that layer, we'll see it kind of bounce back and forth, but toggle back and forth between the layer and the mask. And I can just bring different parts of the mask in, or the layer in. And again, just showing you the mask. Now I'm just undoing a few of these and showing back the layer again. And if I bring down the flow a little bit, you can see when I start to paint a little bit of a difference here. So it's kind of an additive process now. So at 100% it's completely the level that it's always going to be. But if I have the flow down, it's going to be an additive. So it's going to start off at 10 or 20% of the strength and keep adding onto it as I go back and forth, kind of like a spray paint. So this will enable me to incorporate some variations in the blend, which is nice. I can always get back to where I want to, whether I got 100%, I just have to kind of go over it with a couple of strokes. And here I have the layer selected and not the mask. So let me make sure I've got the mask selected, and then I can start using that brush tool to kind of paint in there. And what I'm really doing is kind of just hiding that on this layer and revealing the layer beneath it. And I'm just clicking in a few spots here to kind of reveal the numbers. And the more I click on it, the clearer it'll get. And if I just show you the mask again, you could see it's not, that there's a variation between the grays and the blacks and the whites in here. If I just go back to painting with a little bit, turn that flow down, you can see I can start adding to it. And clicking back on the layer, and you can see, foot's been revealed, some of the tire. And again, just make sure you're clicking on that mask, otherwise you'll be painting on the layer itself.